Hello, and welcome to our podcast series, which is going to be all about careers after Euroculture. Each episode will be featuring an interview with an alumnus sharing their experiences after graduation. I'm your host, Jody van 't Hoff, and today I'm with my co-host, Francesca.
Hello, I'm Francesca Retto, and today we are going to talk with Simon De Leeuw and Albert Meijer. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Simon De Leeuw, a Euroculture graduate who graduated in 2017. So I started in 2015 to 2017, and my host university was the University of Deusto. And after that, I went for my guest university at Udine. And now I'm currently working for Dutch Culture Center for International Cultural Cooperation in Amsterdam.
And Albert?
My name is Albert Meijer. I am from the cohort of 2011-2013. So a while ago, I studied in Groningen, in Uppsala, then Osaka, and then back to Groningen. And right now, I also work at Dutch Culture, but within Dutch Culture, I work for the Creative Europe Desk, the Netherlands.
Thank you very much. It would be great to start with the organization in itself, Dutch Culture. Could you explain something about that, Simon?
Sure, yeah. So Dutch Culture is the Center for International Cultural Cooperation of the Netherlands, you could say. And an easy way to introduce what Dutch Culture does is to compare it to similar organizations in other countries. You may have heard of the Goethe Institute or the Instituto Cervantes in Spain, the Institut Français. Well, there's national institutes for culture, as you can call them. Dutch Culture is the equivalent in the Netherlands. And whereas the Goethe Institute, you can see offices and buildings of the Goethe Institute all around the world, Dutch Culture has only one building in the world, and which is in Amsterdam, which is where Albert and I usually work in normal circumstances. Our goals at Dutch Culture are simply put twofold. We are funded on the one hand by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to make culture part of international relations and diplomacy. And secondly, our task by the Minister of Education, Culture and Science to assist the Dutch cultural field in developing their international ambitions. So these are the two force fields, the two things that we are on the world for. And there's a lot more, of course, to talk about. But simply put, this is the general gist of it.
That's great. And maybe, Albert, you can explain how Creative Europe is connected to Dutch Culture?
Creative Europe is a little bit of an odd one within Dutch Culture because we are both funded by the Dutch ministries and the European Commission. So Creative Europe is the European program for the cultural and creative sectors. In each participating country, there is a Creative Europe desk. And so sometimes it's a separate desk, an independent desk, and sometimes it's housed within another institute, and that's the case for us. What we do is we give advice and information and workshops on this program for the Dutch cultural sector.
So that is what you do as an advisor for the Creative Europe Desk. And Simon, what exactly is your position at Dutch Culture?
My position is also twofold, and it encompasses a lot of different aspects of Dutch Culture's activities. But you could say I'm a program editor and researcher, which means that as a program editor, I'm typically involved on the contents and the aims of our events that we organize. Events being normally organized in venues where we host 50 to 100 people, but specifically, and I think also of interest to Euroculture and the master's degree, was the project that I did, which maybe explains it most clearly. Last September, we organized with Debate Center de Bali the Forum on European Culture, which I was a program editor for. So that involves finding the right speakers to appear at debates, organizing exhibitions. It's a vast selection of art and debate and discussion on the topic of Europe, and which is very much one of our larger projects happening every 2 years. And then in my role as a researcher, I'm involved in writing also the more strategic documents that Dutch Culture needs to work on and in its longer term planning. So, for example, we are now moving from one policy period into the next, and that involves creating the new plans, coordinating what our objectives are, and basically making sure that we get the funding that we need for so in these kinds of strategic processes, that's also where my involvement as a researcher comes in.
Yeah, that sounds like a very varied job with a lot of responsibilities. Then my last question about your current job is, what is your favorite thing about it? Why do you love it?
Why I love it is I think the variety of people, the variety of ideas, the variety of culture that you can discover while working, especially as a program editor, you're directly in contact with people in the arts and people in the cultural field. And I think I draw most inspiration from those moments, from those contexts where we set up exciting and start to create also along with people from the creative field. Programs, topics, for example, we do a podcast series, and those moments where we have our most strong connection to the field, I think, are what I can draw energy and inspiration from.
So it's really the interactive aspect of your job. That's
sure.
Great.
Yes. Yeah.
And Albert.
Why do I love my job? I think these European programs are a little bit distant to a lot of people and a little bit of a puzzle, even for culture professionals, to figure out what European funding is about. What I really love to do is to kind of explain the program and help understand the cultural sector to see why international collaboration is important and why European cooperation is important in the cultural sector. That's kind of like the big picture. On a day-to-day level, I have a lot of talks with a lot of interesting organizations, and it can be a museum somewhere wanting to cooperate on, I don't know, digitization, or it can be a music festival, or it can be an orchestra, or it can be a writing group. So it's a very diverse group of people that I talk to on a day-to-day basis, and I love hearing their ideas and seeing if I can help them internationalize those ideas.
Nice. That is exactly why we're doing this podcast, because a lot of people, when you tell them you study European studies, do not know what it entails or what you can do with it afterwards. So that was the basis of our idea, generally, to clear that up for prospective but also current Euroculture students. Francesca will continue for a bit.
Now we're going to talk about job hunting. First of all, I would like to ask you, how did you feel when you finished your master program and you had to find a job? Were you stressed?
I think for me, well, it was 2013, so we were still in kind of like this unemployment crisis. I think there was a lot of stress of finding any job. I remember that a lot of my classmates had a very clear idea of what they wanted to do, and I really didn't have such a clear idea. The funny thing was that a lot of them applied to this Blue Book traineeship at the European Commission, and so the first thing that I did was like, okay, maybe I should also apply for this traineeship. But then I got it. I think most of them didn't, and I was very lucky to move on to Brussels in this exciting traineeship program, also within the Creative Europe part of the European Commission, which is funny because I don't think any other part of the commission would have suited me. So I was very happy to go along and have this opportunity be presented to me almost right after graduation.
Wow, and I'm happy to hear that you were sure of your future, because I'm not sure. So it makes me more comfortable with myself. Thank you. And Simon, do you want to add something?
Well, I just want to say, if you're not sure, I mean, a lot of people are very sure about what they want in life. A lot of people are not sure about what they want in life. I don't know. It may never come, but life is a box of chocolates, right? So something will present.
Forrest Gump, yeah.
That's
exactly.
True. That's true. And there's and in a box of chocolate, there's all these flavors that you all kind of like, and sometimes you don't know which one you like best just yet, right? Yeah. And I think that goes as well for, I think, many people who go and start Euroculture in the MA. For me, it was another little cosmos that I could explore and find out more stuff, but I didn't really have a concrete idea that I set out to, or an ambition that I set out to go and achieve once I finished the masters. I was incredibly relieved that I finished quite in time. I remember in June 2015, while also had the August deadline, so I had this summer ahead of me. And it was from there. On the one hand, I remember then a couple of months after, I missed a little bit the comfort of just being in a lecture room and in a seminar, just working and chatting with fellow students. And it took me some time before I actually got into a next position in something that had anything to do with my studies, right? So I moved back and I moved to Amsterdam. I started working as a tour guide almost full time in the summer. Got incredibly tanned, but I didn't spend any time thinking about what to do next in terms of my career. And I knew that there were still many things that I could focus on later. But for that moment, I was okay just being and working a part-time job and biding my time. And I'm not saying that works for everybody. I had also some luck that later, but I could combine eventually my job as a tour guide with an internship here at Dutch Culture. I managed to save up some money from tips and from the work that I had done for about a year. And then I thought, okay, this could be a good investment if I start as an internship. Which maybe could have been an internship also during my MA. So I did an internship after graduating, which maybe sounds like not such a logical step, but for me, I felt it was a right place again to pick things up, and it got me eventually a half a year later the job.
So you basically started doing an internship at Dutch Culture, and then you became like a normal employer.
That's right.
Okay, yes. Doing an internship after the master is always an idea. Like in Italy, it's really common. It took for you, like you found your job like after 1 year and a half. And what about you, Albert? How long did it take to you to find a job?
Well, I mean this traineeship was pretty much lined up after graduating, so that didn't take any time. But of course, that was a temporary half-year thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I stayed in Brussels for a while, but then I moved on to another job.
In the end, did you enter in contact with Dutch Culture by yourself? Like you didn't use any kind of network linked with Euroculture to find them?
No, I think so. It's difficult. I did my professional track in the masters at the European Cultural Foundation in Amsterdam, who are very much in touch and in the vicinity in the cultural field in Amsterdam here with Dutch culture, but not so directly. It was not so that I found out about Dutch culture during my time there. I got in touch and I got to learn more about Dutch culture from someone who worked there, who I was involved with in a model UN after finishing my master program, and who I met in Italy. And I think she told me about Dutch culture and what they did. And then how it goes. I started following them on Facebook or just noticing them on LinkedIn as well. I think that was the contact moment. If you ask me when did I get introduced to Dutch culture, that was the contact moment. And then from there on, it's just in your timeline, basically. And a vacancy showed up and I decided to apply for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we already started a bit about talking about Euroculture. We just have a few questions because this is most related to your job. Simon, you did the internship at the Cultural Foundation. How do you think the experience helped you for finding a job later?
I think it was my first experience at all in an office space, in an office building with colleagues and desks and a printer room and these kinds of things. I guess that's one of the things just as a blueprint for working in an office that lasted with me. But also it helped me knowing the shared European cultural space that we still work in, and also today. It helped me. One of my main tasks was to read and process grant applications for a very small travel grant system that they have at the European Cultural Foundation, Step Beyond, which supports the mobility of artists if they have a project in Europe. So it helped me to see also that what drives people when they set up an international project and apply for it at the foundation like the ECF. What is the motivation behind it? How do people write these kinds of applications? What is a recurring theme? And that was for me a good moment to learn about my first step into culture, as my background was always IR, international relations, in my bachelor's, and also politics were mainly a focus of mine during the master's degree. I got to learn cultural actors in Europe and their ambitions.
That's great. Yeah. Also interesting to hear that your bachelor was focused on a different side of the Euroculture program and not on the cultural side where you ended up. And Albert, you did the research track in Osaka. Do you feel that helped you with your job experiences later? Do you feel you can translate some of those skills?
Yes and no. I think I chose the research track because I had done a master's before, and I had done an internship in an office environment before in a music institution because I studied musicology before Euroculture, and so I had kind of covered the internship learning experience in that program. So I thought I chose the research track in Osaka because I had never been outside of Europe and very interested to kind of get that outside perspective. I wouldn't say there's a direct link to the work I'm doing now, but for me, it was great to study far away or in such a different context for a while, in learning that the world doesn't revolve around Europe, right? In that sense, it has taught me maybe more intercultural skills or a cultural awareness more than anything practical that I'm applying now.
Thank you. Another maybe more general question is, in hindsight, what do you think Euroculture taught you that is important now for your job that you use frequently? For example, Francesca and I are currently in the second semester doing the Eurocompetence 2 project at the moment. So it could be, for example, project management as a skill. Maybe Simon first?
I think Euroculture, it appears in subtle ways every now and then. Project management is one of those that I disliked when I did that course, and making the Gantt charts. I remember those classes in Udine specifically. Sorry if anyone is listening from Udine. But anyway, I think what sparked my interest and opened my world a little bit more was the cultural construction curriculum within Euroculture, because it made me think about that culture plays such a vital role in Europe. It's a very much still a beginning discourse around our societies, and cultural construction opened my eyes to the sense that everyone who's working in the cultural field is building a little bit of a story of Europe, a multifaceted story of Europe. And with the classes on cinema, literature, and all these different art forms, I got amazed a little bit and also encouraged by the way culture is a place where stories are being told and broken down and told again and broken down, and that opened my eyes to me for the essence of culture, the importance of culture in it. So it's maybe a little bit vague and lofty, these words, but for me that was the most inspiring thing that I still take today, and I still see it as a motivation.
So it's less a practical skill you've learned, but more just the love of culture that you discovered during the program, that you're still in the culture sector right now. Yeah,
I would say so, yes.
Perfect. And Albert?
I think it's funny because Simon comes from an IR background, mentions the cultural constructions courses. I think these courses were my favorite, but it was also because I was from a cultural studies background. So that's maybe the reason why I studied Euroculture, but what I bring into practice is more what I learned on the political constructions courses. Of course, that's something that I wasn't really aware of, how the European Union works, how it functions, what cultural policy means in a European context. And those are things that I still use, at least on a weekly basis, to explain to applicants, saying, well, look, there's this European program for culture, but this is the idea behind it, and this is kind of like the political idea behind this program. Also, now there's a new program being presented, hopefully soon, and it's been quite a political process to get there, due to Brexit, due to Poland and Hungary blocking the budget due to the coronavirus. And so there's all these political steps being taken in the formation of such a program. They all kind of also have their effect on finally those projects that are being applied on the ground. So that's something that I still use very often from Euroculture. I think also the practical side of the Eurocompetence classes were useful, but I don't know, I can't really reproduce them anymore right now. I would say one of the other most important things is just the network that you build up within Euroculture. Just knowing, I'm still in contact with some of my peers. Also, I worked for Euroculture for 3 more years after coming back from Brussels. So I would say I have a pretty good Euroculture network, and all these people end up in interesting places as well. And I sometimes see an organization that I'm in contact with, and I see a name pop up, and I'm like, oh, I think that's a Euroculture alum. And so it kind of helps me to connect more easily to other organizations. Yeah.
That's very good. It's very interesting to know what you remember most about taking away from the program, because sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you don't know how it's going to affect your future. So just the last question, content-wise, the direction you took within your study, because I mean, we follow the same courses, but everyone has a very free space to decide what to research and everything. Did the things you research, for example, your thesis topic, feel free to talk about that if you want. Did it actually lead you to the career you're having now, or was it completely dislocated from what you're doing now? Maybe Simon.
Sure. So it didn't. I don't think it exactly led to where I am right now. That would be a very strange situation. As I wrote my thesis about the construction of national identities during Euro 2016, the football tournament, which was the year that Brexit happened. And I analyzed, basically, to put it very simply, the way in which the British media or English media constructed the idea of nationhood during the tournament, and how it can be read as a historic document also during the time of Brexit, sort of prescient during that tournament. Was when the vote happened, and I compared that to the Belgian situation, and they are sort of on the opposite side of things, because Belgium as a football team holds that nation together after it's enjoyed so much success. But in any case, this deconstruction of national identity through media, I guess, and through mediated football was my thesis, and it was a project I felt, because I'm just a football fan, I felt this is something I can readily combine with discourse analysis and constructionist theory. It hasn't led to entering the job at Dutch Culture, as you might imagine, but I do see some sort of a red line that I managed to maintain in the programming. So in the Forum and European Culture, we did organize an evening around football and Europe and its cultural significance for the continent. So I would say, if you ask me about my thesis, I would have worked maybe for football journalist platform otherwise, but this abstract thinking about popular culture is something that reappears, and that's something that I can still very much take as an added value for the job that I'm currently working.
Yes, and I mean, it did concern culture, so it's in the same area, even though it might not correspond one-to-one, but yeah. Albert, was it the same for you? Are you doing something in the area of your thesis, or not at all?
Well, yes. So I wrote my thesis on the Eurovision Song Contest. So I made an analysis of just 1 year, the 2012, I think, Song Contest, to see what kind of subliminal political messages are being said about national identity, European identity, which was the most fun topic. I really loved writing my thesis and doing this research. I don't know. I found a lot of people kind of frown when I say that I wrote my thesis on Eurovision, but I actually ended up winning a thesis prize with it. And so it kind of, I mean, it's dying down a little bit now, but especially in the first couple of years, I had some interviews every year when Eurovision was coming up, and I wrote another book chapter on it. I'm a freelance writer next to my job, and I still write about Eurovision as well, because every year there's like this new treasure chest, right, about pop culture and European identity. So I definitely still use it. And I think, a couple of months ago, or last year, I even had a meeting with the Eurovision organizers in Rotterdam, because they wanted to know about European funding and European programs, and etc. So then it was really fun to kind of humble brag about about my Eurovision thesis. But yeah, I think in a wider set, it's like Simon says, there might not be like a direct practical connection, but what I love about my job is this combination between pop culture or culture and politics. I think that will always remain very interesting to me. And so that's something that I take from writing this thesis still into my day-to-day work.
Your thesis topic sounds great. Actually, both of your thesis topics, it shows that if you pick something that you love and that you enjoy writing about, it might just fit. That's fantastic.
I think that's probably the most important takeaway or lesson that I would tell Euroculture students that aren't really sure about their topics or their careers or whatever. I always believe that if you do what you love and what you have a genuine interest in, that will make you the most happy, and that will also make you invest time and energy in that topic, right? So it's going to be a better thesis than if you choose something that you think, oh, maybe I can get a job with this after. So try to follow your heart, as cheesy as it might.
Very good reminder. Yes.
I can subscribe to that advice. It's if you write about something that you love, that makes all the writing feel much less like an uphill battle. So time passes more quickly, or you work faster if it's just a topic that you like thinking about, and you like to imagine new situations in, or if you're sparked by a certain element of what you're writing about. I think that's the basis. Yeah, that should be your driving force.
Great. Francesca, do you have concluding questions?
Yeah, the concluding part, I'm going to ask you like some information about you and your future. So you seem like pretty satisfied with your job, but do you have any idea? Would you like to change something, or do you have any plans for the future?
For me, yes, and especially the last year has hammered that realization down that I don't want to be spending all my time in Amsterdam all the time. So I do want to eventually, whether that will be under the current job that I have or not, would like to live for a prolonged period in another country, speaking another language. I did go to Bilbao and Udine also to learn Italian and Spanish in the opposite order. But that there's something that I feel like that would be a time wasted if I don't go to another place, immerse myself once again, and start to build something from scratch. So this is an idea that also for my personal development would be very good for me. It's on the one hand one ambition that I have, and I think the pandemic has brought that urgency a little bit more maybe. But secondly, I'm also someone who is not of the long sort of ambitions to clench onto something. I always think I'm functioning well, and I'm happy if I'm focused on short-term goals, and then from the corner of my eye there's something that appears, and I can latch on to that. I try to combine these two.
Wow. Yeah. And you, Albert?
Well, I mean, Simon has been working, has been working longer for Dutch culture than I have. I only started last year in January, so a bit over a year that I've been working here. So I still feel fresh and excited about the work. What I am, I work 4 days a week there, and I have been thinking of finding a 1 day a week job within the sector itself. So because I think throughout all these years I've been kind of on a bit of a distance to the cultural sector, just giving advice, or before this I was working for a theater network, but it was always about culture, but it wasn't really doing it. So I'm playing with this idea of getting a small job at the side just to be a little bit closer to the cultural sector itself.
Simon, you brought up a topic that I'm really interested into. It is actually like that after 2 years of moving like from a nation to another, like meeting different people from different cultures with different cultures. Like for me, I think it's going to be strange to stop this process. Going back to be sedentary, like for me, it's strange. I'm not ready maybe, but the fact that I have to pay efforts like for longer than 6 months and cultivate relationship for longer than 6 months, it's going to be strange, I guess.
Strange, but also necessary, because I felt, but I completely understand what you mean. The Euroculture 2 years, because they're just, you move from one place to another. You're not also investing maybe in truly long relationships with your environment and people around you, or at least the physical location. It still feels at times as a stepping stone, if you understand that. What I mean, that's something that I share. And then to come back to Amsterdam felt like, okay, I can take a little more root here and also take things easy. In hindsight, though, if I look at how I both in Bilbao and Udine, I really wished I would have made more of that time. So it wasn't as if yeah. I really wish I had more, like I didn't spend like a wasted afternoon just in my room doing nothing, which is completely fine for any student to do. But now that seems so far away, or I guess also it's the pandemic, right? You just don't take traveling for granted anymore. And now that I think that I've spent 6 months in such a beautiful city, I wish I had outward energy going, making connections there.
And you, Albert?
Yeah, I think, I remember Euroculture as being so exciting to move away for half a year. And I think after Euroculture, I moved to Brussels, and then moved to Groningen, and I moved back to Brussels, and now I moved to Utrecht almost 2 years ago. So I've slowed it down, but I've still been moving around. It's the reality of life that, of course, there is some worth in staying in one place for a longer time and investing in long-term friendships and jobs, etc. I think that doesn't necessarily mean. I mean, right now I really miss traveling, just going to another place. If there wasn't a pandemic, I'm sure we would travel a lot more within our jobs as well, and then maybe not for half a year. But those are the things that I really do miss. So if you're asking me right now, of course I'm like, oh, I really want to move abroad right now. I think that's maybe not realistic in the long term.
Okay, so it was a phase of your life, and now more.
Yeah, exactly.
We grow, and we have to, and we experience different things, and everyone is different.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I'm the oldest one here, but it's also good I moved back as well to be a little bit closer to family, and so it's good to invest time in your family and friends back home. They're important.
I have a last advice.
I think my biggest advice is indeed to not just focus on yourself, maybe, but also to focus on the people around you. If you haven't found your own passion yet, look around you and look at people who are finding their passion, and maybe it sparks something in you.
Thank you. And Simon.
I decided to just go and do a day job and working, and it could be in a cafe or it could be guiding. And in the meantime, I was trying to try my hand at different things, but really uncompensated. So I tried a little bit of journalism. I tried a little bit of writing, just little skills with small goals for small online platforms to try my hand at new things, discover new topics and some new skills. If you are not really at the place that you are where you want to be after graduating, find a balance that works for you in that moment, I would say, between what you can do and what you can learn from, if it's not the new dream job that you've been aiming for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for all these advices and for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
And thank you for anyone who's listened to this podcast. I hope we can see you in the next one. Goodbye.